I am privileged to introduce and invite on stage His Excellency Dr. Anwar Mohammad Gargash, the esteemed diplomatic advisor to His Highness the President of the United Arab Emirates. I have his bio, but let me just, from my heart, introduce him as one of the most wise, influential, and certainly helpful international statesperson and leader who has been dedicating his life to building relationships and peace across the world. Dr. Gargash, we heard Dr. Gabard speak just a little while ago and emphasizing on the importance of peace and partnerships. I want to first start with the India-UAE partnership. I think there's a mic to your right, sir. I want to first focus on the India-UAE partnership, which certainly in the last few years has been the breakout relationship. And I would really like to know from you what is driving this glue, this new relationship, old new relationship. What are the contours and ambitions of this partnership?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And first of all, Samir, I have to say that I'm really honored and privileged to be here and to speak to this audience here. So thank you very much for having me here again. I think the first thing in this partnership is results. I think what is driving the Indian Emirati bilateral relationship is results. The more that you feel that you are putting an effort into bilateral relationship, and that bilateral relationship, like everything else in life, is bringing in results, the more you are enthusiastic about it, the more you put more effort into it. So that's a main driver. And I think the second driver is through also this growing bilateral relationship, we have a huge faith in India's future. And we want to be part of that trajectory. That is why, in many ways, our, political cooperation is expanded, our investments have expanded, our three-way partnerships have expanded. So clearly, I mean, as you mentioned, this is an age-old relationship. Proximity helps also at the same time. But definitely, I mean, there are many age-old relationships that are not renewable for the future. But here you have results and you have a big faith really in where India is going.
Dr. Gargash, both UAE and India have, in their own ways, chosen strategic autonomy, chosen multi-alignment or multiple relationships with different actors as a undergirding of their foreign policy in the recent years. How difficult is it to actually defend strategic autonomy in these highly polarized times?
Yeah. Well, it's, I think, India, of course, has a long diplomatic history in the issue of strategic autonomy, also aided by its size, its weight in the international system, and so on and so forth. But I think overall, the nature of the international system emphasizes it. The international system is actually telling you that you have to be strategically autonomous in many ways. I think this is the lay of the land, so to speak. This is what we are seeing in the past so many years. Is it difficult? I think at times it can be difficult, but I think at the end, in various issues, you can actually be more helpful to your partners when you have a more independent course. I mean, I'm just thinking very clearly about our early position on the conflict in Ukraine. The idea basically that you have to take a certain position. And then suddenly we see all these positions are not what they were. And I think we have, as you have, in fact, been very helpful to both parties, actually, to the Ukrainians, to the Russians, to the international community, by being able to help and support. So in my opinion, for a state like the UAE, which is an important state with an independent view of developments in the Middle East, we can be more helpful to everybody by being more autonomous in our policy. But at the same time, I don't think we suffer also from a hubris where we think that this strategic autonomy is limitless. You know, you have to realize that it is bounded, and you have to be able to navigate and find ways of trying to, to sort of...
You will have to sometimes take positions.
You will have to take positions, you will have to perhaps back off sometimes, etc. But I think the overall trajectory of the international system tells us, and I think we're seeing that these days, tells us that there are no permanent camps. And as a result, why would you want to be part of a camp and suddenly find out that the goalposts have changed? So I think that is also, realpolitik in many ways. But, I mean, at times, of course, it'll be difficult to navigate, but I think the overall results are having a more effective foreign policy.
Dr. Gargash, the Middle East is, again, in many ways looking for some form of a solution, some form of a pathway for the future. And it's a journey. It's good to say it's a journey, it's a process, but we are looking for something to change there. In your view, in your assessment, as one of the tallest leaders of that region, what can the world expect in the days ahead in terms of finding something that is durable and sustainable, and where all stakeholders have an interest in maintaining it?
Well, I think the first thing is that the Middle East has gone through, in the past year plus, the Middle East has gone through what is essentially a geostrategic earthquake. And as a result, we need to absorb really what are these lessons. And I think in many areas, we should not jump to be engaged with various developments, but at the same time, not take very clear-cut positions in a very fluid situation. I think everything we need to do, because also of the nature of this geostrategic earthquake, everything we do has to be de-escalatory, and everything we have to do is more communication, and everything we have to do is make sure that we are engaged, that there are no vacuums. So clearly in various areas in the Middle East where war has really changed important realities, it is extremely important not to jump in and take a position, but be engaged, find out what's going on, etc. I think longer term, there are clearly certain paths that have proven that they don't work. I think number one is containment. I think on the Palestinian-Israeli issue, clearly containment has not worked. And containment is in many ways delaying the next confrontation and the confrontation after it. So clearly we need to go beyond containment on an issue that is quite central there. But I think on the other hand also, the past 10 years or 15 years, we have seen also the proliferation of militias and control of the militias as parallel parastate entities. And I think we have also seen that these militias have really taken the region into conflict and more conflict. So clearly also working on the state system is extremely important, because states have more, in my opinion, calculations when it comes to taking lightly the issue of war and peace. So that I think is important. I think the third issue is the Middle East also is, a large sort of tent, meaning that the term itself encompasses failed states, successful regions, etc. I think as a subsection of the Middle East, or at least from the Arab side, the Gulf states are doing well, because I think in many ways the Gulf states understand that economic liberalism and political liberalism are essential for you to move forward in a world that is moving very fast in terms of technology and in terms of investment and in terms of the economy. So again, that is extremely important to try and put economy at the forefront. So in reality, rather than selling ideology to the people, you also have to sell, significant benefits in their daily lives, etc. I think that's very important.
Dr. Gargash, how important is the influence as well as the role of outside actors in the Middle East? For one, there are big questions on what will happen under the Trump presidency. That what does his re-election do to peace prospects in the Middle East?
Well, I think three comments here. I think the first comment is outside forces remain important because the Middle East also is an area of various forces fighting for influence as well as regional forces. So outside forces are important. But I think at the same time, the mentality in some countries that it is outside forces that determine the trajectory of the country also are self-inflicting in many ways. So I think in a certain way we have to accept that outside forces play a role, but I think the more united internally you are, the smaller the sort of space you allow for outside influence. I think again with President Trump, like every president, but here of course you have a very non-conventional president, there are opportunities. There are opportunities, and I think in many ways we need to be able, for example, on on the issue of the Palestinians and the Israelis. I think we need to make a better case to the American administration that we need to go beyond containment. I think that is extremely important. So in many ways, I think we have, as we have challenges, but we do really have a very different sort of presidency. There are opportunities. I think like India, we feel also that we do have a chance at pitching our view with the Trump administration about how can we actually change the trajectory of continued conflict in our region.
We also have countries in the region who in the past were looking at settling some of the old disputes, say with Iran, for example, efforts to normalize ties. And that was something that had episodic progress in some sense. We used to move a few steps forward and then we used to either drop the ball or regress. How is that particular effort evolving?
I think in many ways you have to come, like in every issue where you have a push and pull, you have to come to the middle. And both sides have to come to the middle. I think Iran, in being more realistic in how it reconstitutes its view of its national security, and at the same time, I think in the case of the UAE and other Arab countries, to try and emphasize what is common with Iran, not what is problematic with Iran. Because if we look at that from the perspective of a glass half full, we will see that the common areas of cooperation are way bigger than the areas where we disagree with Iran. I think this is also part of our discussion and dialogue with Iran, and we're actually speaking the same language. The whole emphasis that we understand that there are certain areas where you and us don't see eye to eye. But there are so many more areas where we do see eye to eye. Let's work on these areas where we do see eye to eye and hope that the sort of, confidence building that comes out from that spills over into areas where we don't see eye to eye. I think Iran also, the policy of good neighborly relations that was constituted also in Iran in the past few years is also encouraging, and I think is helpful. I mean, many of the Iranian decisions that are basically sovereign decisions. And I think we have to respect that these are Iranian decisions that are sovereign decisions. But I think at the same time, through creating what I would say the right environment, I think that also in itself builds more confidence. And I think it is time for us to try and work very hard on that in order not to, as you said, repeat the conflicts of the past.
Dr. Gargash, there are also a few exciting projects in the region, more positive projects. I'm now turning to what could be potentially beneficial for the region. One of them, of course, was the I2U2, or the group of four, which included both India and Israel, but also UAE and US, working together on a number of domains. There has been a change of US administration. There has also been a change of geopolitical reality in the region. That project still is used many a times in common, parlance amongst diplomats and thinkers. Is that something for real? Is that something that should be invested into? Is that
I
something?
think so. I think we have, of course, been to a certain extent derailed because of the war that we have seen. But I mean, let's not forget that the Abrahamic Accords was very much initiated by Trump 1.
Correct.
The first Trump administration. So clearly we find that there is a lot of enthusiasm and aptitude for anything that comes out of the Abrahamic Accord. So I expect that these things will be back on track. But I think ultimately it also leads us to something else. I mean, when you work with a country like India and you're doing well in a country like India, I mean, the next frontier is always, what do we do together with other countries? And I think this is the same sort of byproduct of that. So I think in the area, I mean, you have to remember, part of the UAE's DNA of success is logistics. So clearly, for us, it is extremely important to work on these, what I would call logistical routes, whether these routes are horizontal or whether these routes are vertical, north to south. So clearly, this is an area that we are very enthusiastic about. And as I said, I mean, the Abrahamic Accords were a big success of Trump 1. And I expect that this is also going to come back front and center.
And I guess that corresponds to what you just said, the IMEC corridor to the north, to Europe, but also the Africa Bridge. In some sense, we've been hearing about the recent visit of the foreign minister a few months ago, where the Bharat Setu to Africa was initiated.
I mean, again, if you think of our relations with Africa, I think this is a remarkable story. I think in many ways, this is a story where the world is changing, where at some stage, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you had to fly from Dubai to some European capital to get to Africa.
Correct.
And I think that's changed.
Now Europe flies via Dubai to Africa.
Definitely. And I read a wonderful article actually on migration, on African migration in the New York Times only last week, where basically we're always thinking of migration as a north-south phenomena. But this was really taking the story of many migrants who had come from Africa to Dubai. And in many ways, this was a totally different and in many ways, I think, very flattering view of how this migration, which is a south-south migration, has taken a trajectory. It has its own challenges, of course, but I think, again, these are real realities, and these realities are saying that the world is changing, and I think we have to also be, very dynamic and very fluid in also understanding these changes.
Dr. Gargash, before I open it up to the audience and take a couple of questions, and let me alert the young fellows that I'm going to first come to you to pose your questions. Let me ask you that question that worries all of us today, which is around what's happening in the transatlantic relationship. I think we have many conflicts and many contests and many challenges, but the most interesting poser of this times is the future of that relationship, which was in many ways underwriting the world order as we know it. Now, how do you assess what's happening across the Atlantic Ocean?
Well, I don't really want to comment on transatlantic relations, but I think this is again, if I have one comment, this is again, I think, something that we spoke about last year at the Raisina Dialogue. The world order that was instituted following World War II is changing. Many of the building blocks that people thought are there forever are no longer, it's not the same glue that's holding it. And I think this is quite a challenge for many of the countries concerned. But I think in places like Abu Dhabi and places like New Delhi, there's, I think, a clear understanding that the world is changing and that what we were thinking are sort of permanent edifices of a bygone world are sort of transforming. Doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but I think the one that you indicated, which is the transatlantic relationship, was one of the main pillars, really, of the 1945 world order. And clearly, this has to be, in my opinion, dealt with, transitioned slowly in order also for us to be able also to address these changes in an orderly way.
One of my friends from the African continent was suggesting we should send a conciliation group of elders from the global south to solve their problems. But can I turn to the young fellows? Can you walk to the mic? And can I ask others who want to pose questions to stand in front of one of those mics and I'll come to you. But go ahead. Please introduce yourself briefly and pose the question.
Is it on? Yeah. Hello, thank you very much. I'm Christopher El-Khouri. I'm from Lebanon, but I live in Italy. My question is regarding My question regards the earthquake that happened in the Middle East that you just mentioned. I totally believe it is an earthquake, not the first in the past years. The thing is that all the development that we are seeing in the Middle East are mainly shaped or by international powers or by regional ones, but there are not Arab states. We think about Turkey, Israel, Iran. My question is, when will Arab states build a framework to engage in the region in shaping their own destiny and the region? What is the role of the GCC in doing so? And from where to start? Where is Egypt in all this? Where is the Arab League? Thank you.
Well, again, I think number one is we have to start with the, in many ways, the war, the wars in the region in many ways were partly the work also of various militias. And I think to start with, it's extremely important to strengthen the state, the nation state itself. I think nation states also have to take responsibilities, whether these states are Lebanon or Syria or any other country. So you do need that. So reinstating the Arab order starts with the nation state. I think strengthening the nation state is extremely important. The idea basically is, if we believe, of course there is external influence, but if we allow the idea that external influence directs every single policy of our country or of our state, then we fall into that trap, really, of expecting decisions by others to affect us. I think the important thing is this internal rejuvenation. The United Arab Emirates, as an example, is also influenced by what happens in the world. But I think we have also faith that we can also be an influencer. And how you do that is through credibility, through partnerships, and through a strong internal position. I don't think the idea basically that the Arab state system can provide some political and diplomatic support, lobbying support, but I think it should start really from the state itself. And I think whatever comes back is more of a support and help in that state. Now, in various areas, such as Lebanon has had, a very wise and important, idiom for a very long time, which says, no victor, no vanquished, because Lebanon also includes various communities. And I think that is a good indicator of how an internal situation of no victim, no vanquished should actually lead the way.
Go ahead.
Hello. Hello, thank you. My name is Salman from Maldives. My question to you is, given the current state of international relations and the mistrust in global governance from the UAE's perspective, how can we revitalize the multilateral system? What needs to be done? Thank you.
Well, I think to a certain extent, the multilateral system is as good as the members of the multilateral system. If there is polarization in the system, then of course nothing gets done, because that's the way the system was built. I think for many, many years we've heard about reforming the UN. Now, when will this happen? God knows. I don't know. I'm not going to bet any money on it, but I think it's very much indicative. In my opinion, if the American efforts currently are successful at addressing the war in Ukraine, this will de-escalate within the multilateral system, will make it slightly more effective. But fundamentally, we are wearing a suit that was tailored in 1945. And, you know, we've grown larger, the suit is tight on us, and ultimately I think this is going to be an evolutionary process, because again, as we mentioned last year, we don't see really a San Francisco congregation as we saw in the mid-1940s. So I think it should be evolutionary. Now, what this means is that bilateral and trilateral, and at times also regional gatherings and regional organizations are becoming more important. But then again, also these regional gatherings might also suffer from the same fate, because it all depends on the relationship between the states that are part of this. So ultimately, let's not only blame the multilateral system, but also see who is leading the system and why are they so polarized, and how can we actually address this polarization, because we're all paying the price for it.
Let me turn to you. Yeah, go ahead. Introduce yourself and ask a question.
Yeah. Jean-Luc Saran from France. Dr. Gargash, I had a question very quickly on the Red Sea. Yeah. And we've seen over the last days the Trump administration decided to intensify airstrikes on the Houthis. The UAE, like most of the Gulf states in the last year and a half, refrained from joining the Western operations in the Red Sea. How do you see right now this evolution of the Trump administration's approach towards the Houthis and more generally the Red Sea? How do you see that affecting UAE and Gulf security? Thank you.
Well, again, I think with our forces near Hodeidah at the time, there was a huge polarization of what to do next internationally. There was a view that we have to address this because of geostrategic concerns about a militia taking over the government in Yemen, and at the same time with threats really to Yemen's unity, and with threats to Red Sea shipping, etc. And on the other hand, there was a humanitarian argument that if this takes place, the humanitarian cost will be huge. Now that discussion was basically settled on the humanitarian side. And as a result, we are today paying the geostrategic price. I'm not saying the humanitarian consideration was less important, but that really was the discussion that was taking place. So as a result, Houthi rule became more pronounced in Yemen. As a result, we are seeing these threats on the Red Sea. As a result, we are seeing also Houthi involvement in the war in Gaza. And as a result, we saw Israeli geostrategic reach come all the way to Yemen for the first time in history. And as a result, today we see the American operations, continuing operations in Yemen. I think this is the argument that we have to always address. Were we right on the geostrategic concern and considerations, or was the other opinion right on addressing the humanitarian? And here is where we are. In many ways, once you have been involved in a war for 7 years, it's very hard for you to come back to a conflict. There is no appetite. You understand that you have done everything you can within that period, and I think this is the role of the UAE. We have no appetite to come back to the war in Yemen. We have an interest in the Red Sea, but we think that there are states that have greater interest in Red Sea access and accessibility and safety, etc. So I think this is part of the sort of debate and polarized views of a few years back.
You know, although I'm out of time, but I'll just let you take one question and ask the lady there to pose a question if she's... do you want to ask a question? No. Okay, then I'll ask, then you can go ahead, please. You can walk to the mic, ask the question, short question, because we are completely out of time.
Sure. My name is Ali Al-Hamadi. I'm a diplomat trainee at the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy. My question is, at a time where multilateralism is under strain, how does the UAE view fostering cooperative solutions, particularly between global north and south?
I think the principle that I always try to emphasize is the UAE, like every rational actor, does not act alone diplomatically. We're not a solo diplomatic player. We work with friends, we work with allies, we work with like-minded countries. We understand the shortfalls in the international system. We try to address them together. We try and find commonalities among our friends, and we don't try and push our friends. We see where our interests and our friends coincide and work together on that. And in other areas, we find other also friends who see this as an issue and try also to work together. So clearly, we are a country that wants to be relevant, wants to be dynamic. And to be relevant and dynamic for a country like the UAE is to work with friends, to work with allies, to work with like-minded countries. And I think when your message basically is positive, it's about de-escalation, it's about communication, it's about diplomacy, it's about prosperity, it's about technology, it's about responsible climate also, policies. You find friends and you work with them. But I don't think that us or any other country that is our size can actually be very effective in a solo role. I mean, you have to work with friends, you have to be dynamic, you have to be bringing new ideas to the table. Always, I think ideas are extremely powerful in moving agendas, but you have to work with friends. You can't do it alone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gargash. Please join me in applauding him for his time and his wisdom. And it's an honor that you joined us. Can I request you to join me for a photograph?